What's going on, Tamers? It's me, Guy huffing copium at this point. Yesterday, the Japanese ban and restricted list got updated for the DigimonTCG, and I think that I collectively speak for everybody by saying, what? So the changes reflect the English ban list that got updated about, I don't know, a month ago at this point. And the only change that deviated from that list is that they also included restricting Greymon from BT7 to 1 per deck. And after reading that, looking it over, thinking about it for a while, I slept on it. It really feels like Alphamon X Antibody was like the innocent bystander in the room who just got caught by a stray sucker punch. Like this doesn't really mean much of anything, honestly. Even after reading Bandai's explanation of why the card was limited to 1 per deck, it doesn't really make much sense to me. They cited that the card was too powerful on Digivolve for 3 costs, allowing you to basically not be deleted by effects or having your DP minus for a turn. And then in Inheritance, you also got Security Attack +1 if you had an X Antibody Digimon. This seems fine in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's opinions that I spoke to. The card doesn't seem too power creep because it only works in X Antibody decks and is only really useful in X Antibody decks. And even if you look at the tournament results currently for the EX3 meta, the deck is not even within the top 5 in any of the aggregate tournament result sites that I look over. So it feels like this is kind of like I don't know, like it's hard to say why they made this change if I'm being a reasonable player. Tinfoil hat moment. It feels like Bandai really needed to add something to the list just to justify the Japanese ban restrict list being updated a full 20 days after the English version did. And they didn't want to make a change that seemed too impactful, but they wanted to make it seem like they were doing something, thus Greymon. So to really understand why this decision doesn't make sense, let's talk about why Bandai would decide to ban or restrict cards. First reason is because a card or a deck has been too powerful in the meta for too long. Typically when a deck is topping for around 3 sets, Bandai decides to intervene. One example of this is Jet Sylphimon. Came out in BT7 here in the JP side of the game. It is now just past BT10. Bandai has stepped in, and on this list they decided to restrict Jet Sylphimon to 1. But this is a wholly financial decision, and honestly, even as a player, it makes sense. Bandai has to sell more cards, and if all the old cards are still winning, there's no reason for players to buy new cards. Thus, you ban something or you restrict something. Another example of this is Saber Huckmon. We saw Jessmon do really well for a ton of sets here on the JP side of the game, and Bandai decided to step in and limit the Saber Huckmon in the deck, which is really what kind of pushed it over the top to 1 per deck, and we saw the deck immediately fall off. Another reason Bandai decides to ban or restrict a card is because it just kind of gets through QA testing, right? They do the best they can to make the playing field even for a lot of decks out there, but sometimes, things slip through the cracks. If a card has an ability that's just absurdly strong, Bandai steps in. This happened before with the BT5 Mega Digimon Fusion, which is the only card in the game to be outright banned because of how powerful it is. Giving a player a essentially free level 7 Digimon for even a single turn was pretty strong, and Bandai stepped in and squashed that immediately. And the last reason that Bandai might decide to ban or restrict a card is because the card is just too flexible or too useful for the current power creep of the meta. So what does that really mean? Let's dig in here. There are some cards that are really useful in not just one kind of deck, but a myriad of different decks, and we call these cards staples. Sometimes Bandai prints cards they intend to be staples. One example is BT7's Bokomon, who is useful in all of the hybrid decks no matter what the color was. However, there are some cards that Bandai doesn't intend to be staples that end up getting used in a bunch of different decks. One such example is Eismon. He basically slotted into every purple deck, no matter what the archetype or the game plan was for the deck. He was just useful. Bandai didn't intend this, and they ended up stepping in and restricting the card to 1 per deck. You could kind of lump this in with the last example, but to be honest, even decks that were using Eismon at the time weren't considered insanely powerful, but the card was considered insanely useful itself. So if we take these 3 examples and try to apply them to Greymon, you see that it doesn't really make much sense. We can first ask ourselves the question, has Greymon been too powerful for too long? And I would argue no here. It did come out in BT7 a while back, but the deck that it was used and intended for wasn't that strong at all, and in fact it was quite weak. It didn't really see popularity until BT9, where X Antibody exploded into the meta on every color, and even then it was only useful in black. So we're only a set after BT9 where it was very useful, and it doesn't really seem to be the case that it's been too strong for too long. We can then ask, well, is the card too powerful? Did it just slip through QA testing? And it doesn't really seem the case because it's been out for 3 sets and it wasn't limited or restricted before. So if the card was indeed too powerful, I would have expected it to be caught much earlier, perhaps in BT9, where it was topping everywhere. And then the final question is, well, is it too useful in too many decks? And the easy answer here is no. It's useful in one kind of deck, it's Black X Antibody, and that's it. you might try to make a case, well, oh, maybe you could get the non-destruction effect by slotting in like a bunch of X antibodies level 5 through 3, and then like change level 6, but that seems kind of like a cope. So when everything is all said and done, I really don't have an answer or a clear answer as to why the card was restricted to 1. If you guys have some other theories out there, feel free to put them in the comments below. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe and the like buttons, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.